think maybe we should turn to school development fee report, which we have the same for panelists. Mr. Aguilar, are you presenting that as well?
This will be Mr. Bruno.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You're up, Mr. Bruno.
Well, okay. So this report actually, our role in this was similar to the previous report where we provide the projections. And I was looking at this report, and for some reason I couldn't see sort of the projections. It had said there was an attachment to it, but I didn't see the attachment. But I think the same sort of thing is happening in terms of the development is slowing, so the amount of revenues coming in from this is being reduced. I don't know the situation in terms of how much spending capacity is left with this. Rafi, is that part of this report in terms of the similar to what we just talked about with the road excise tax? How much spending capacity is available based on our latest projections? This report looks at I think this report, and it was put together by the County Administration Office, and it's in response to a requirement per state law that it's required to have this report to kind of just to have those 5 things that are listed at the beginning. Detailed information regarding school facility surcharge, description of how the fees were expended, the total amount of the fees collected. So there's a lot of information in this report. And DPZ's role, again, was to provide the projections to try to come up with an assessment of the amount of revenue available.
Yeah. The same thing applies to what we have in the road improvement plan. You can see the balance we have here is about $2.4 million left. And so far for 19 and 20, we did not issue any new debt at all because there's no money left, no more capacity as well. And so that's really what we are faced with. But of course, from the report, you can see the council approved an increase in the surcharge. So as we see those revenue start coming in, and this we hope that this fund will begin to generate more, have an increased balance that would then go towards fund this more for the debt we are going to be issuing for schools.
Mr. Glendenning, is there a debt service cash flow model for this item like we just got for the road excise tax? That perhaps I've missed and everybody already has?
For the school surcharge?
Yes, please.
Yes, there is. I can... Mr. Clark, I know you're listening. If you wouldn't mind forwarding it to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Going back to what Mr. Brunel just mentioned, this report was put together as a result of the code said it had to be. In fact, it was one of your former assistants, Chair Walsh, that brought it to our attention that it was supposed to have been provided. I can't remember the date, but sometime before November. It was like in July or August. So we worked with the third floor, and actually a couple of the council members added in the purpose, the reasoning why we had CB 42 passed, and that which you can see on the report. But yeah, that was something that the third floor county executive's office and the council actually worked on putting this report together.
All right. Ms. Young, so do you want to ask some of the questions that you had during our road discussion here? Having to do with schools or no?
Well, yes, I'm happy to ask those questions. I don't want to put Mr. Bruno on the spot though, because this is really about bond funding and I'm sure there's probably nobody who knows more about school capacity in this county than you do, Mr. Burnett, but I'm not sure how closely you're following the bond funding. So I don't know, Craig or Rafu, I'm not quite sure who would respond to the question on, given where we're at now with the number of schools that are on the list for the school construction under their capital, in their capital budget for school construction, and what's already in the works, Talbot Springs, Hammond, and High School 13. Do we have, what is our debt capacity at present? And is there any realistic chance that anything that's on the school construction list beyond the 3 that are already being funded and are in the process for funding, is there anything else that can even be funded?
Yes, I'm looking at the updated model we have now based on the updated information. Yes, for 21, 22, 23, and 24, the amount is really going to be low. And because of the debt service, we're probably going to have the lowest balance we're going to have is about $216,000. However,
$216,000?
Yes, that will be the lowest
I
point.
just wanted to make sure I knew what you just said. Okay, that's not much.
Yes, and that will be in 2022. But from there, then the revenue is going to keep increasing. And of course, we have to factor in future debt service, which is not in this model yet. But the revenue is going to increase starting from there up to currently 2040 to about $198 million. So We're going to have capacity as we move forward with this model. And I think this is factoring in the bill that the council passed to increase the school surcharge. So we're going to get, the revenue is going to go up. So there is going to be capacity going forward. But for this next couple of years, it's going to be low. I think it's probably almost 5 years that we're going to really have a low balance. But from there, the amount is going to increase. Of course, the debt service is equally going to increase.
You estimated it will be very low for the next 5 years. That's a long time in Howard County.
Yes.
There's at least 5 other schools, I think, that are on the list now.
Yeah.
I just forwarded you guys the most recent cash flow, which I think Mr. Aguirre was talking from. And I think those really low numbers, and again, Mr. Burnell could comment on that.
Hey, Craig, the
comes from that study, and it comes from the Apfo report, is what knocks it in 22, 23 on those years, and then it comes out of it again and increases.
Mr. Glendenning, we didn't get the attachment.
Yeah, when you forwarded it, didn't. I think that. Sorry, guys.
We got a forwarded email with no attachment, Mr. Glendenning.
Okay, that's my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Mr. Glendenning is correct. So this also relates to the fiscal study that we did with the consultant recently related to the APFO, with the thinking that since a large portion of the county is closed due to the school capacity test, that the amount of new projects coming in would dip in the 4-year period because you could be on hold for 4 years, right? And then it would pick back up after they get out of the 4-year waiting bin. One thing to keep in mind, however, we're going to update these numbers in the spring, working with the budget office. We're seeing, I think, a different picture than what had been projected with the fiscal consultant. What we're seeing is that based on pre-submission community meeting requests, which is a sort of a leading indicator because all projects have to have a pre-submission meeting, we're finding that the number of new residential submissions, and it's only residential that pays for the school surcharge, not non-residential. So the new residential submissions, they're not even coming in. they're coming in at a very, very small to no rate the last year and a half, since July 2019, when the new Apfo regulations kicked in. So we're seeing, so it could be that there's not a bump up after the dip, is what I'm saying. And it's to be determined. We just don't know, right? We don't know what, and this could be an impact from the pandemic too. So there's just a lot of unknowns, but just, you know.
So when will you adjust a chart like this once you come to some conclusion as to the cause or its end, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we update these numbers annually. And so now that we have this new sort of evidence of pre-submission meetings not coming in, we would probably run a scenario that shows what the impact of that will be. It will probably spread out the reduced number of residential a little further.
All right. This is something we provide to you all at budget time. We get this from finance and budget and provide it.
Okay. So we now have it, and the one that we have is dated April 15th, 2020. But it's showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Am I reading that right? 10 years of negative between 2020 and 2029?
Which one?
Estimated surcharge collected, and it's in red, so I'm taking that to mean.
Not the one.
Why are those in red, I guess is my question. Starting with 3.948 million and ending at 21,041.
Are you looking at the school surcharge fee?
Yeah, the estimated surcharge collection. Why are those in red?
Yeah, it's like the fifth or sixth column over.
Oh, yeah. The collections. Okay.
Yeah, the collections, they are estimates.
That's why they're in red?
I'll find out and I'll let you know. I'm not so sure because they are not negative, so they are positive numbers. So I'll check and I'll get back to you.
Okay. All right. I still don't understand the answer to what I think is Ms. Young's question, which is what do we do for the next 4 years? It's the same question that we had with the roads is, are we collecting only enough to barely, cover debt service? And then how do we actually continue to construct what we need to construct? And then P.S. Mr. Lubley, we're going to need to hear from you about the state's latest representations in terms of what they're going to fund, because it sure doesn't sound good. I'm sorry, Ms. Rigby, you've had your hand up for a while. All right. So before you guys answer that, let's hear from Ms. Rigby, but go ahead, Ms. Rigby.
I just wanted to add one into that, which would be the ideal combination of cash and bonds for each project, because I think we've heard over and over that we don't want them to be fully bonded out, because then we end up in a situation like we're kind of are now, or we're paying everything off. So just to add that sort of balance into the equation on your list, that's all.
Well, and to build on that, Christy, last year when we were working on the surcharge bill, we were told we didn't want to bond any of it because there were so many fluctuations in how it came in that we didn't want to leverage it. So
I thought they wanted to leverage some, but I might have had that wrong.
If you look at the column, that's the third from the left, it's PAYGO. So that is exactly what you're talking about, Mr. Youngman, right there.
Right.
Right.
I mean, budget fought hard to keep it, to keep the assumption is it would only be used as PAYGO because you couldn't project 20 years out as far as the income stream to bond it. You would just need a couple years out on the PAYGO.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. So this PAYGO column, if it didn't exist, then we would be in the negative for some period of time, right? We're avoiding going into the negative by putting PAYGO towards debt service?
I mean, basically, if so we have already appropriated 2021, that $3 million. So if we get to 2022 and the projections are bad, then we just don't appropriate the $4 million in 22. We'll be forced not to keep this in the black or blue, whatever color that is.
Well, hold on. No, the PAYGO looks like money spent. I mean, if we have revenue that comes in, if revenue in 2021 is 10 million and debt service is only 6.5, then your ending balance would grow. So we're looking at funding PAYGO out of this fund for projects, right?
Correct. So if you went to 2022, we're looking at that ending balance of 216,000, but that's if we appropriate $4 million of cash, PAYGO, into the budget. So,
But not to prop up this fund, but from this fund into
Right.
the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
So then, yeah, so if everything becomes more dire, as Mr. Brunow is stating it might do, then we just won't be putting that $4 million worth of cash from this fund into whatever projects are looking at having it.
All right, so then, Mr. Lubley, are you the person who will answer our question about what's the right balance and what do we do in the meantime when we have a $216,000 balance in 2022 from the school surcharge fee?
Good afternoon again. In reality, I mean, it really comes down ultimately to where the funding sources are coming in. Obviously, our two largest funding sources are the county and the state. So right now, the top priorities, as you noted, Chair Walsh, are Talbot Springs, Hammond, and high school number 13. So we do have the 10-year long-range master plan that does identify those future needs as we go forward. As far as your previous question, you noted with regards to what the state's doing, the IAC, the Interagency Commission, did hold their meeting on December 10th, and they looked at the IAC staff's 75% recommendations for fiscal year 2022. And at this point, they again only voted on the 75% recommendations, but they are looking for Howard County for the entire FY22 of approximately $20.7 million. At this point, that looks at high school number 13 and Talbot Springs Elementary School. So it still has Hammond out as a B for local planning and C for the actual funding for that project. I think it's important to note that the state funding and the model that they're doing right now is they have multiple different factors in there, but the primary factor that they're looking at from year to year is what is the 10-year average that the county got. And so they're basing their initial numbers for each state. We are eligible for enrollment growth and relocatable classrooms. So that does help us from year to year as well. So that $20.7 million for FY22 does include that money, the approximately $4.8 million for EGRC funding. As far as what we do in the next 5-10 years, if the money, or next 4 to 5 years, if the money is very scarce, that's a very good question that I'd have to really delve into with the superintendent and the Board of Education. As you know, this doesn't just affect the capacity needs, but also the systemic needs for the school system. So it's a very important question that you bring up.
All right, so at this point, do you have even a ballpark answer to I think the question that Ms. Rigby and I are asking jointly, which is what it would be the ideal balance, saying that those funding sources actually even existed? It would be what percentage state, what percentage bond, what percentage general funds?
I don't have a ballpark number as far as the individual funds. I mean, the state and county split remains at the 45-55, knowing that the state participates in the construction, the eligible portion of the construction portion of the projects. But as far as the percentage between the surcharge, the bonds, the state and all that, I don't have individual numbers.
Okay, my son just made outside the sound that I was hearing inside my head at these at this conversation. I feel like we keep having this conversation and these reports keep getting worse. I don't know, council members, if you have any more questions or comments to add to this subject. Or our panelists, if you want to leave us with some parting good news.
Yeah,
or terrible news if you're Mr. Bronow.
I do have some form of good news. The red, what the red represents is that we factor the COVID impact.
Okay.
We working with budget, we factor the COVID impact on those years. So that's why they're in red.
All right. So it's finance's belief that COVID is going to extend into 2029.
That's exactly how we're looking at it for now.
And Refu, you think that's good news?
Because when it gets better, then that is different. Because it's
Okay.
going to get better. That's the worst case scenario. So
Okay.
that's what we presented. Now that's why I said it's good news. Because it
All
could
right,
get better. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
All right. Anything else from anyone on school development fee report? No? All right. Well, thank you very much, Director Minier, Mr. Bronow, Mr. Aguirre, and Mr. Lubley for joining us today on both reports.
Thank you all.